Oh.
Time no see. In a few more minutes.
Cool.
So yeah, this is what I expected.
Got it down to a science. Yeah. It's real good, actually. And this is a great turnout, man. I mean, you know, how many seats did you put down?
60.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, so it should. There's a couple missing, but it should come in around 60.
Cool.
Hi, Tom. How are you? Good. These are a lot of my CERT volunteers.
Hey, how you doing, Joe?
Nice to meet you.
I can tell that from this.
Sure. No.
I have to take attendance, but there's probably 20 of my CERT volunteers.
Cool. Nice.
They always come through for me. You guys, let me see.
It actually, I always pretended Android is actually so the Android is like more customizable iPhone, but I can't remember if I this, I that. I can go customize whatever I want to, but iPhone have to be. I'm telling you. They say that not all kinds
I don't think there's a sign in right now.
I definitely want to offend Joe, but I don't want to offend you. They say that iPhones are good for lazy people and Androids are yeah. Just because it's more complex, there's more ways you can go. You know how I would put it? The iPhone is like Columbia, and the Android is like Arkansas. I will tell you this much. I heard that it's easier to go from high Android. That's probably why. If you went from an iPhone to an Android, it's very even, I mean, Rich trying to go from an iPhone to an Android, and every time that it comes up, whenever anybody's together, he's like, I feel like I couldn't figure out where anything was. So like my iPhone, I can go from this one to this one, and it's exactly the same. Because there's you can't customize it. Right. You can't customize it. So like on your iPhone, it puts your apps or whatever on your page. It's like this is like I can't remember exactly what it said, but it said something about like Androids are just more customized than so I don't know. I will never do that. No, I won't even. I love my Android. Oh, I remember territory. I remember.
About 60.
Cool.
You guys are and the slide out. You could like slide and you could like type instead of having to like A, B, C. I put the slide. Yep. And then I went from that to. I went from that to the smartphone.
Want some chairs?
I think I have two together.
Where do you want to sit? Oh, right here? All right. Yeah, absolutely. Of course.
Joe, this is Bernie.
Well, not harmless. He's super lethal when he wants to be, right? Yeah.
Joe, that's Marie. I want everyone that's neighbors, I want you to know each other. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah. Hugh? Hey, what's up, dude? Nice to meet you. Yeah, you too, man. Yeah.
Thank you all for coming out tonight.
so we'll talk later.
Cool, yeah, absolutely.
I couldn't have hoped for anything more than this. This is a great audience tonight. Appreciate it. I'm Dan Martin. I'm the Safe Community Coordinator for the Village of New Lenox. And again, on behalf of our Safe Community Coalition in the Village, I welcome all of you. Just about every one of our presentations, I kind of say the same thing. There are a lot of choices that we have, all week long. During the weekends, weeknights, whatever. You could be home doing, whatever, watching television, taking it easy, but you all made a choice to come out here tonight and try to learn something that could save your life or maybe the life of others around you. So I commend all of you for being here tonight. I appreciate you all being here. Just a few housekeeping things. The washrooms are right outside in the rotunda there. The men's is the first one. Across the rotunda is the women's. There's drinking fountains out there. There's bottled water in the back. I don't know how much Joe is going to cover in this. I do it in my presentations, but these are all the exits here. So be aware of where the exits are. There's also exits here. In the unlikely event that we have to shelter in place, we would go right through this door right here and right down the hallway to room 137, and we would shelter. But I don't think there's anything with regard to severe weather tonight where we're going to have to do this. This tonight is a product of our Safe Community Coalition. We have 6 task groups: domestic violence prevention, suicide prevention, substance use prevention, older adult falls, motor vehicle traffic safety, and emergency preparedness. So this kind of falls under the realm of our emergency preparedness task group. Joe, who I'll introduce in just a second, he is relatively new to our coalition and the emergency preparedness task group, and I have to tell you, we're really happy to have him. Once I read his bio, and this is only going to be a portion of it, you are going to be very impressed with this gentleman. He's just a great asset. He's already done a guest speaker thing for our coalition and did an outstanding job with it. And I'm really looking forward to this presentation tonight as well. So I think everybody's going to be in for a treat tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to just go over a little bit of Joe's bio. He was a member of the Marine Special Operations Command, the MARSOC Raiders. In total, Joe deployed 7 times to numerous countries, including all major combative theaters, including Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. After 13 years in the military, Joe left the Marine Special Operations Command to start Southern Cross and pursue a career in helping everyday Americans develop skills and knowledge to keep themselves and loved ones safe against violent criminals. Joe has a bachelor's degree in Homeland Security and Emergency Management, is an international board-certified protection professional through ACES, is a national registered EMT, a certified mobile forensics examiner, NAUI certified rescue diver, a certified technical rescue team leader, an NRA firearms instructor. The list goes on, trust me. Since leaving the military, he has trained thousands of citizens and hundreds of police and military personnel across the globe. He has published a program content creator for Special Operations Digital Intelligence in the specialty of battlefield mobile phone intelligence, exploitation, and analysis. He has written a book titled The Women's Safety Guide and continues to provide valuable service to schools and Fortune 100 companies across America. Joe now focuses on providing customized training programs to corporations and schools on how they can use neuroscience to prevent violence. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Joe Malone, our speaker for tonight.
Thanks, man. All right, good evening, everybody. How's everyone doing tonight? All right? Good, great, awesome. That's like a lot of energy from a room on a Tuesday night. So as Dan so graciously said, my name is Joe Malone, and my goal here for tonight is to really just serve you all. You know, when I was deciding to leave the military, It's 13 years. It's kind of a big deal. It's all I ever really knew. And I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to help in America. I was tired of going overseas and just seeing it dissipate into nothing. And so thinking about what I could possibly do to help Americans here at home, the Marjorie Stoneman shooting had just occurred. And what really struck me was that the majority of casualties in that school were on the first floor. The first floor. What struck me even further as I started to dive into it is that they were bragging about their active shooter code red plan for 8 months leading up to the incident. 8 months. They were bragging, and they had just came out with a news article and an interview talking about how amazing their active shooter plan was before Nicholas Cruz went in there a few days later and ended up killing, I think, 13 or 15 people. So I started thinking to myself, there's some sort of disconnect here. Now, in the special operations community, we live in an active shooter environment. We go and we link up with indigenous people, and we have to judge their characteristics and their traits and their mannerisms to determine if they're actually friendly or not. Zero government vetting takes place before. And unfortunately, on both my Afghan deployments and one of my Iraq deployments, we ended up having some insider attacks. Ended up killing about 5 people total. So having so much experience within the active shooter realm and constantly training for it and constantly planning for it, I decided that that's what I wanted to do predominantly. I wanted to get out and I wanted to help Americans plan and prepare. And then ultimately now we've gotten into the prevention piece, incorporating some neuroscience. It's really amazing stuff. But my goal is to help you all, and tonight's very basic, very surface level stuff, but I want to at least give you a couple of tools, tactics, and strategies that you could take with you so you can live your everyday life with a little bit less fear. The biggest problem I see people taking away from these classes is that they start thinking about active shooter and the adrenaline starts going, and then they read the news, and then they start doing research, and now their brain, their survival portion of their brain starts kicking on high gear, and they're living a life full of stress and fear. But that's not the goal for tonight. The goal for tonight is to give you these tools, tactics, and strategies so that you can actually breathe a little bit. Just by knowing this information and starting to keep it with you everywhere you go, you're taking the appropriate steps to keep yourself and your loved ones safe. So be prepared. Don't be paranoid. The goal isn't to be walking around distrustful of everybody. My goal is actually the exact opposite. I want to show people that most people are good, great, kind people. Sure, we have a lot of disagreements throughout the day, especially when driving on the highway. But ultimately, most people are just trying to get by and live their lives. And so I think that by encouraging connectedness with one another, especially here in America, we can start to develop the atmosphere where we'll see less of these incidents occurring because we'll just be a little bit kinder to one another when we actually see one another for what we are and who we are. So that's the overarching theme for tonight, is to take a couple tools, tactics, and strategies and look at your fellow Americans and human beings as a brother and sister, not as a stranger you should be distrustful of. As Dan had so graciously said, I have a background working a lot with law enforcement and in the military. I just say that so you know who's up here talking with you tonight. Now, the first thing that I want to cover is that you are very, very capable of surviving an incident if you're ever caught in one. You are. Every single person in this room is. We're not going to really talk about prevention tonight, but whenever I talk about preventing violence incidents, every single human being is capable of also preventing one. If you're interested after this tonight, you should look up a man named Aaron Stark. Aaron Stark. He did this really powerful TED Talk, and then he basically dropped off the map because the news media outlets were trying to manipulate his story into some sort of an agenda. But his TED Talk will bring you to tears, and it talks about ways that we could prevent violent crime from occurring and prevent these erratic outbursts of anger. But everybody here tonight is capable of doing the tactics and strategies we'll discuss. And so therefore, if you ever find yourself in these situations, do not get overwhelmed by hopelessness. Do not get overwhelmed by fear. All right? Anytime I get nervous or teach high-stress training, I always tell my students, WWMMD and breathe. What would Matthew McConaughey do? He'd be cool, right? So, breathe deep. Always in through the nose if you can. Hold it for half of a second. Then out through the mouth. In through the nose. Hold it for half of a second and out through the mouth. It's called box breathing technique. You could also look up some videos on that as well if you're interested. But box breathing will help cool that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight response in us. And it'll allow us to think a little bit more clearly, which ultimately allows us to escape a situation more safely. So you are very capable of surviving these incidents. Now, who here has heard of run, hide, fight before? Show of hands. Basically every single hand in this room just went up. I am not a huge fan of run, hide, fight. I'm a bit contrarian on this, okay? And I'm gonna tell you why. Because when the DHS published the run, hide, fight guidelines, that's all they said. Run, hide, fight. Okay, well, where do I run to? How do I run if somebody's wounded? Can you leave a coworker or a stranger behind if you know that they're wounded? I couldn't. So tonight I want to break it down into 3 different types of categories: a pre-incident, a during an incident, and then a post-incident. So then that way we could think of this in 3 different phases. Living our life every day, which is hopefully never really the pre-incident, but just the everyday living. If you're ever caught in an incident, a couple of really key things that we could do. And then ultimately, once we make it out of the incident, or as we transition out of the incident, some really key things to take away that will assist law enforcement and that will assist medical personnel in making sure that we have complete accountability and actually conduct a good recovery. Now, through the portion of tonight's class, feel free to ask questions. I'll answer 1 or 2, but I'm not going to let us get on a tangent just because we are on a timeline, and I will be sure to keep some time at the end of the presentation today just for an open forum if you have any questions on anything. So this is really for you. Ask any questions that you have, raise your hand. I really want you all to be engaged and to get some answers to anything you might have. Don't worry about stumping me. It's not the first time I've ever been stumped, so I'm not too concerned about it. All right. So, learning goals, what to do during the pre-incident, during the incident, and then after the incident. So, pre-incident, I like to refer to this as empowerment skills. Why do I refer to it as empowerment skills? Because the way that we live our daily life, if we apply these principles and fundamentals, will actually empower you in an active shooter situation. So, what do we talk about when we talk about pre-incident empowerment skills? Somebody in here, give me one thing you think that you could do in your daily life that will help you prepare for an active shooter incident. Somebody just shoot one out.
Be aware of your surroundings.
Be aware of your surroundings. That's a really great one. So who here has ever heard of situational awareness before? Go ahead and raise your hand. Most people. Now, let me ask you this. How many of you in here who had your hands up have ever had situational awareness explained to you before? A few of you. About maybe 20% of everybody who had their hands up. So we always hear, keep your head on a swivel, always be looking around. It's so distrustful of a pre-context, isn't it? Like, always keep your head on a swivel. So, sir, what did situational awareness, when you had it explained to you, what was it explained as?
As a situation with your surroundings and be aware of what's going on and different sights and views.
All right, awesome. Be aware of the sights and views and the things that are going on around you. That's a really good term as we start to really narrow it down and focus it in. I like to define situational awareness as a couple of different things. One is where we need to look for what we need to look for, and then when we need to look for the thing we need to look for. Right? Don't worry, it'll be much more clear here in just a second. So I break this down into something that I call 5s and 25s. That's what I just defined right there, and I'll expand on that a little bit further here in just a minute. The other thing that we can kind of do to start to prime our brains and prime our minds into having greater situational awareness subconsciously, because here's the thing. Our brain burns more calories per ounce of body weight than any other organ in the entire body. It's a caloric burning machine. So when we have to consciously think about thoughts, what's that? Did you just make a smart comment? I'm not going to repeat it. Yeah. So, it's per gram of weight more than any other organ. So, when we have to consciously think about things, the brain has 2 duties: conserve energy and to keep us safe from harm and death. So in order to conserve energy, when we repeatedly think about something, who here has ever been driving before to work or driving home from work, spaced out, and then all of a sudden you're in the driveway? Show of hands. Every single person just about in this room. That is a perfect example of the subconscious mind. After your brain thinks about something so many times over and over again, it just says, you know what, I'm tired of burning calories thinking about this. I'm going to put it into the subconscious mind where it hardens that neural network. And all of a sudden now you become more just spatially aware of your surroundings. Like when you're driving home, hitting the turn signal, changing lanes, making the turn, and you don't even realize it. So the goal here with that is to, or with this whole thing that I'm talking about, is emergency exits. So Dan had mentioned, hey, these are the emergency exits in this room, in this building right here. Just by making a simple game out of it, whether you're with your loved one or with a friend, I know it's kind of a lame game, but I think it's really fun. Try to identify how many emergency exits are in the buildings that you happen to visit, or try to identify alternative routes along your daily routine. So if you're taking a walk every day, walking your dog, go a block over, go 2 blocks over. And what you're doing is you're expanding your mind's conscious awareness to, hey, I know where the emergency exits are in every building that I go into. You do that enough times, your brain will push that into the subconscious and you will just become aware. This also translates outside. So if you're caught in an active shooter event and you're outside somewhere, your brain will automatically be registering what we call outs, or escape routes that you can put yourself through or egress through in times of great stress and fear. Because in times of great stress and fear, we do not think logically. How many people in here have ever been in a confrontation, like an argument, and then, the argument breaks up, and then 20 minutes later, you're like, man, I should have told them this. This is such a good line. Would have made me look so cool. Well, why didn't we think about that in the midst of the argument? It's because the logical portion of the brain shuts down, the adrenaline gets pumping, and we go to that sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight response. It happens to every human being. It's a pre-designed mechanism that helps us survive, get pumped with adrenaline. It's why grandmothers can lift cars to save babies, right? So by having these routines and these thought processes consciously put into our mind, like looking for the emergency exits, walking alternative routes, when we do it enough times, it gets pushed into the subconscious, and therefore in times of great stress, you'll be performing without even consciously realizing it. So we'll talk a little bit more about situational awareness and exactly what I mean when I say where to look, when to look, and what to look for. A couple of other things are physical fitness. Having some sense of physical fitness is really important because not only are you going to need to get yourself out of that situation. I have a 20-month-old child. The doctor says he weighs 33 pounds. I swear to God, this kid weighs like 65. My wife showing me her arm, she's all toned now from carrying him around. And I'm like, I can't even carry him anymore for more than 30 seconds. Imagine if I had to pick him up and go running with him. It's going to take a toll on my body physically. And so having some sort of physical ability to us helps everybody else as a group survive the incident, because it's not just every man for themselves, every woman for themselves. It's us as a humanity really needing to come together in order to resolve this issue. So some sense of physical fitness, plus like we talked about, if anybody gets wounded. Family link-up plan. Who here keeps a family link-up plan when you go to Disneyland or go out to the park or go to a concert or an event of some kind? Having a family link-up plan will greatly reduce the amount of stress that you have in times of great stress. Imagine being separated from your loved one in the midst of everything. Think of the Vegas shooting, right? So much confusion. Nobody knows what's going on. All they know is all of a sudden there's people grievously wounded. You get separated from your loved one. Now you're meandering around looking for them, trying to find them in the midst of what we call the X or the kill zone, right? Having a family link-up plan, I told them to meet me at the water fountain, at that water fountain. What's the Buckingham Palace called again? Buckingham Palace. There we go. Oh my God. I'm making sure that you're all paying attention. So my point is that you really want defined geographic structures that aren't going to move easily. So whether it's, the Bellagio, like you were saying, someone's been to Vegas once or twice, or whether it's the car in the parking lot, right? You want to have a family link-up plan everywhere you go because it will greatly reduce the amount of stress that you have. A guy that I was working with, who ended up dying, unfortunately, he had 2 kids that were left behind. I went with his widow and the kids and then a couple other kids to Nashville, Tennessee, the Opry place out there. Yeah, there you go. One night, all right, Annabelle had a really big habit of wanting to wander off. She's an adventurer, right? And she's 6 years old. Holy cow. You want to talk about stress. I was breathing hard on that box breathing technique, thinking to myself, oh my God, what just happened? I lost my dead buddy's kid, So ultimately, she was sitting at the coin pool because she knew that if she got lost, she needed to go to the coin pool. And thankfully, we ended up finding her there. So that's just one example of how having a family link-up plan can really, really be beneficial. All right, a couple of other things that we could do in order to best prepare ourselves for an active shooter incident. One is take firearms training. Some people might say, well, that's a little bit controversial to say at an active shooter event. Who here can tell me how every single active shooter event ever in the history of mankind has ever stopped? Wasn't necessarily shot, but they at least had guns pointed at them. Every single one. Knowing how to use a firearm effectively and safely is a tool. All right? Just because you know how to do it doesn't mean that you have to be the hero who rises to the occasion in that point in time, all right? But just having a familiarization and being comfortable and having, some confidence with it can greatly benefit you in these times of great stress. Over in Indiana at the mall there, young Elijah Dickens, it's all right, it's all good. You can take it. A 22-year-old man, was fortunately able to prevent a much larger tragedy from occurring about 8 months ago, I think it was. So just by familiarizing yourself, you're building your confidence, you're developing skills with a new asset, a new tool, and it could definitely help you out a lot in terms of surviving an incident. And then another thing we could do is educate and train ourselves. What you're doing here tonight is the first step in preparing yourselves to survive these incidents. You're already going to be better off than anybody else who's never done a single thing in terms of educating themselves. We always want to avoid the active shooter topic. Why? Because it instills fear in us, because it makes us get a little nervous. We don't want to imagine it happening to the people we love. Of course we don't. But that doesn't negate the fact that we don't teach our kids how to drive vehicles properly, that accidents occur, that we don't teach young kids about grooming when, there's somebody who's trying to be a predator against them. So by educating and training ourselves, we are taking major steps in being prepared as possible for these types of incidents if we're ever unlucky enough to have it occur. And then the last thing I talk about for tonight is carry pepper spray. Who here carries pepper spray with them? How many of you with your hands up have ever used it before?
I just tested it.
Tested it? That's good.
Making sure that's not clogged when I walk the dog.
That's smart.
I want to carry the weapon, so I can carry that.
Absolutely. It's a great tool. Everybody thinks that pepper spray is a one and done, and if it doesn't immediately neutralize the person, then it's broken, it's a piece of junk, right? Well, that's not what it's for. It's to create time and delay, which we're going to talk about here in just a moment. This is water, okay? Just so everybody knows. I sprayed this off in an event pretty recently, and somebody was like, ah! And I was like, oh man, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you. It's just water. But how far do we know that pepper spray travels these days, pepper gel? I mean, sorry if I missed it, anybody. I know it made it past you right there, right? So from me all the way to this gentleman here. So it travels pretty far these days, and the gel component reduces blowback. Everybody's always afraid that they're going to get it blown back in their face, so it's just something to definitely consider. It's a great tool. I always advise people take it, and if you don't think it works, give me a call because I'm always looking for people to do videos with. All right? Yes, ma'am.
I know it works because about 40 years ago, my husband bought me one. I was going out, he goes, where's your pepper spray? And I said, it's in my purse. He goes, it's not good there. You got to have it on your purse. And so I said, okay. So I stuck it down here and turned it on. And all of a sudden, I started ripping my shirt off. He goes, you're staying home. My chest was on fire.
I'm not going to ask you to divulge any more details. But it worked, and that's a really great point, ma'am. Something I always bring up, especially like in a lot of the women's safety courses, because women carry it more than men do, is that you don't have to just get it in their face. Getting pepper spray anywhere on anyone's body hurts. All right? But it's activated by oxygen, and so it's important to just understand how it functions, because when you initially spray someone, it's not going to immediately just drop them. It's activated by oxygen, and so therefore after a couple of moments is really when it's going to start to take effect, as you probably experienced. All right, so situational awareness. Who can tell me what distracts us more than anything else ever in the universe? Cell phones. It's literally what they're designed to do, to keep our faces sucked down into them. Who here has ever seen the Social Dilemma documentary? That's it? Okay, everybody needs to look up the Social Dilemma documentary. I'm pretty sure it's still on Netflix, but if you haven't seen it, it is the former chief marketing officers and creators of Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, all the major social media platform marketing content creators, the people who develop the programs, specifically designed them to keep you sucked in them. So just be aware of that. And what it's also doing is creating an avatar of your body, the social dilemma. Yep, dilemma. And we're going to talk about a little case study here in just a moment, but the guy we're going to talk about was just sentenced to life in prison. And in the court, he was in tears and he was incredibly apologetic. And it turns out that sure enough, was in isolation a little bit, didn't go to school. The search algorithms started propagating the same information, hate and discontent. If it bleeds, it reads. And so therefore, that had profound neurological impacts on his development in his brain, and he committed an absolute atrocity. But now look here, the yellow arrows represent phones that are out in this group, almost every single person. The orange arrows represent the level or the direction of their attention. So look at that. Everybody, and what are they doing? And they're crossing the street. There's 2,000, 4,000, pounds of metal screeching through there. And only 2 of them are paying attention. My boy in the blue checker shirt and then my guy up here with the cool shades. My pointer doesn't show on the screen. But you can see it, they're highlighted in blue because they're cool. So, consciously pulling yourself out of your phone will be the single greatest thing you can do in order to increase your levels of awareness. And I'm not preaching at you, I'm preaching along with you. I still myself get sucked down into the thing because it's neurologically hardwiring our brains to do so. We're developing habits and subconsciously pulling it out. And I talk a lot about the effects of the cell phone on the brain, the neurological development, the dopamine release, social anxiety, why we feel the way that we feel every time we go out in public, and why we're always on our phones when we're driving. Kills over 5,000 people a year, by the way, texting and driving. When I worked on an ambulance in San Diego for a little bit, you always knew that they were texting and driving when they crashed because the phone was always in the dashboard where it meets the window and it was going off. So just keep that in mind. Whenever you find yourself out in these parking lots looking at your cell phone, or if you walk in a building and you pull your phone out, consciously just put it away, step off to the side somewhere, and if we really want to get, prepared with it, I always put my back against a wall before I start to go through my grocery list. It's just mitigating the risk that I'm exposed to. Now, I mentioned earlier what we look for, when we look, and where we look. What we're looking for is something I call PHBs. So whenever we're scanning around our environment, we want to look for PHBs, potentially harmful behaviors. Doesn't mean that they are harmful behaviors, but potentially harmful. And a potentially harmful behavior is any action taken by a human that can cause death or injury to another human, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So, texting and driving, PHB, right? Walking around with a gun, dressed up with a bulletproof vest, a helmet and a ski mask on. PHB. That's going to fall underneath the obvious category. But as you'll see here in this case study we're about to discuss, it's really unfortunate. The next is anomalous PHBs. So obvious PHBs is what we're looking for. anomalous PHBs. An anomaly is a disruption in what we call the baseline. A baseline is the general characteristics, traits, commonalities shared between human beings. So everybody in this room right now, the baseline is somewhat attentive and, calm and relaxed. However, if somebody was to just jump up and start pointing at me and yelling in Hebrew, that would be an anomaly. Something that sticks out amongst the baseline. So we want to look for these things. When it comes to anomalous behaviors, it's just one anomaly doesn't necessarily mean, oh, that's something I need to really focus in on as a high threat. But what I've learned in my research and my studies, my practice, is once we get to 3 anomalies, 4 anomalous behaviors, that's really when that PHB is very likely to turn into a very harmful behavior. All right, so once we call it stacking the deck. Don't have too much time to go into that here tonight, but just know that if somebody is displaying or a group of people are displaying multiple anomalies, then we definitely want to circumnavigate or avoid those people. And then the last is nefarious. Nefarious behaviors are behaviors when people use something called a screen to mask their movements. A screen, can you stand up for me, ma'am, please? A screen is anything used by a person to hide or mask their intentions or actions from plain sight of the public. So if I was doing something here, not very nefarious, but if I come here and then I start to get my weapon ready, I'm using this woman here as a screen, but it could be anything, a bush, a pylon. Thank you very much. Let's give her a round of applause. Very good job. Made a great pylon. So when we see people who are ducking in the corner, rifling through their bags, again, does that mean, oh my God, that person's a threat right away? No, not at all. Because remember, most people are good people. But does that mean it's weird for you to be looking over there at me in the corner, messing around in my bag at the public event? No. We as human beings are totally within our right to look at other people when they're doing things that are not within the baseline, right? So don't ever feel awkward. I'm not saying you have to stare people down, but just be aware that when somebody's making some weird shuffling moves, moving from one area, surreptitiously to another area, kind of like creepily, almost like stalking, and then you see them fidgeting with something, right? Kind of like the Boston Marathon bombings. Those guys were acting nefariously, all right? So the 3 types of PHBs or potentially harmful behaviors that we want to be aware of when it comes to situational awareness is obvious, anomalous, and then nefarious. Okay? And, ultimately, we can't see anything if we don't pull our faces out of our cell phones. So the 5s and 25s. So that's what we look for. Now let's talk about where we look. 5s and 25s is the equivalent of a 5 and 25 meter diameter surrounding us, okay? And the reason why I use 5s and 25s is because people within a 5 meter diameter, or 15 feet, about me to this gentleman here with the blue and black and the black right here, that's about, 15 feet roughly. That's about a 5 meter distance. Any human being who's passing within a 5 meter distance of us, you should be looking at them in the face and eyes as you pass them by. Looking at people in the face and eyes as you pass them by can save your life for a lot of reasons. And I'm not going to dive into all of them here tonight, but just know that it registers with the primitive portion of their brain saying that you see them and who they are and what they're doing. And you rightfully should. There's nobody who should be able to get that close to you without you at least knowing what they look like. What's their behaviors? If you're leaving a grocery store parking lot, are they just hanging out in the parking lot? Is that a PHB that we want to be aware of? Is that anomalous behavior, just hanging out in the parking lot? Absolutely. But now if they're got their kids and they're walking towards the store and it looks like they have a purpose, is that a PHB? No, not at all. And so therefore, as you pass them by, just look them in the face and eyes. And for a lot of women, it gets a little intimidating because they don't want to be seen as leading anybody on when they look them in the eyes. So the correction for that is just to look and have them, look past them, right? You don't have to look directly at them, but just look past them so that you're at least observant of them in your peripherals. And that'll really help a lot for your situational awareness. The next is the 25 meter ring. Now, if you're not comfortable with judging, oh, Joe, this 5s and 25s, I don't really understand what 75 feet looks like. Well, it's about me to probably the back wall right here with the 4 signs on it, or maybe even the last row of the crowd. The other saying that I like to say is, if you could hit them with a stone, stay off your phone. So if you took a stone about the size of your hand and you chucked it, wherever that lands, is about your 25s threshold for most of us, right? Some of us more, some of us a little less. But basically, if anybody is within or about to pass into that area of you, then just make sure you're consciously staying out of your phone. Why? Because when you look like that group did crossing the street, and you're a violent criminal or somebody who's waiting for the right opportunity to start shooting a place up, well, what greater opportunity is there than this? Nobody's paying attention to me, which is probably a huge reason why they're doing it to begin with, is because they feel neglected by society. So it makes a big difference, and I encourage you to listen to Aaron Stark's conversation. So 5s and 25s can save lives, all right? Be aware of anybody passing in there. If you get hit them with a stone, stay off your phone. Look people in the face and eyes as you pass them by. And again, this is all raising our situational awareness. The more we do this, eventually the brain's going to throw this down into the subconscious. And you'll just be doing it without even realizing you're doing it. You'll do it unconsciously or subconsciously, just like when you're driving home off of work after a long day. So, I mentioned something earlier about obvious PHB, somebody having a rifle or tactical kit, camis, ski mask, a helmet, a bulletproof vest, ammunition all over them, right? Pretty friggin' obvious, potentially harmful behavior. I'm not going to play the video on this. You don't want to see it anyways. So here we have this woman. My thing doesn't really work. We have this woman here in blue. Behind her, yeah, I see that reflecting. Behind her is a gentleman loading up groceries into his car. This is a grocery store. And you see this little walkway here. This is like the area where people come out pushing their carts, right? We've all seen it. We've all walked past it. And when we see a vehicle stopped there, it kind of sticks out to us, right? Like when you see a vehicle parked with its hazards on, they're either letting somebody out or about to pick up some groceries, or they're waiting for somebody to come out. It stands out a lot. It's not like a normal behavior. It's an anomaly, right? So we have this woman, the person loading their groceries. Here, just in front of the vehicle, in the back there, you have two people, a store employee and an older woman who's being helped with her cart. So what do all these people have in common? This woman, it's kind of blurry. She's looking at her phone while she's walking through the parking lot, while there's an anomaly being displayed, a vehicle parked, two vehicles parked actually, because this guy, this is his car door, it's open. This is the front of the car. He was wearing a helmet camera. If you see somebody parking here in this area with their door open and his windows weren't tinted, they were very clear to see through, and this is the middle of the day, camis, helmet camera, rifle, ammunition, a vest, a ski mask, pretty obvious, potentially harmful behavior. What makes it even more obvious and a split second later, she was dead. Yes?
This was the Buffalo shooting, wasn't it?
Yeah. Buffalo. I was in Buffalo, New York at a grocery market. Not only that, but the gentleman who was loading his groceries was killed. The woman being helped was killed. And the store employee who was helping her was killed. Everybody was killed in a matter of seconds because they were focused in on what it was that they were doing. This woman, look at the step difference. You see where, so we'll look at where she's at here on her phone as this guy pulls up, easily visible through his vehicle. And then literally one step later, it was the last step of her life. Clicker's really killing the vibe, huh? Oh man, it's just getting wild. There we go. So one step and then two steps. She would have been able, if she would have been paying attention to her environment or surroundings and just not using the phone while walking in a parking lot, she would have seen this guy from several steps back, would have certainly saved her own life by turning around and hightailing it out of there, and could have possibly saved the life of that old gentleman loading up his groceries. I don't know about the other two because they were kind of just in a really bad place, but if she would have made noise, started running, she certainly would have been able to survive that incident just by paying attention and not looking at her cell phone.
So who was in that car?
A young guy who was driven by racist ideology. It was a store that was frequented by like a black demographic, and the search engines, going back to the Social Dilemma documentary, if it bleeds, it reads. The search engines are designed to feed us negative, propagating news, right? I had one of my employees recently, a 21-year-old black man from Glenview or something like that. I forget what town he's from. But him and I were standing next to each other. I'm a 35-year-old white guy who lives out here in New Lenox. And I said, hey, because I used to do mobile forensics investigation with the Crimes Against Children Task Force. So a lot of mobile forensics work. And for the woman who was talking about Apple versus Samsung iPhones there in the back, yes, Samsung, you could mess with them a lot more, but iPhone is way more secure, just so you know. But they're all pretty secure these days, as long as you take appropriate steps. But I digress. So I had him and I Google a couple of sensitive topics. I'm not going to talk about what they were, but his search results and my search results were complete opposite. And not only were they complete opposite, and I wish I would have recorded this so bad. I changed this dude's life this day. He never looked at social media the same again. They were belligerently opposite. So what does that mean? It means when we're isolated from other human beings and we're just on the phone and on the TV and on the computer all day, which, hey, they're a great piece of technology. We need to be on them in order to excel and survive in this modern society. But just remember, it is no substitute and it is no representation of the fellow human beings who live next to you and that you interact with and encounter every day. It's not. It is designed to divide us. This kid was just sentenced to life in prison a couple of days ago. Was apologetic. When he did the attack, he was super racist. After being in prison for a couple of months, not having access to these algorithms, in his statement, and I'm not quoting here, but paraphrasing, he's like, I can't believe that I did this. It's like it wasn't even me. It's like I was possessed. Because every single day, you're getting this information that's designed to divide you. So just be aware of that. Have more faith in your fellow human beings for sure. All right. So situational awareness, right? 5s and 25s. If you hit them with a stone, stay off your phone. When you're in these areas, right? These, what I call transitional spaces, and some other instructors call them transitory or something like that, or transitional and transitory. Basically, any area where there's a lot of foot traffic passing through, you should consciously be pulling yourself out and looking at your fellow human beings. Here's an interesting theory, and then I'll move on past situational awareness. Roughly 0.03 out of every 10 Americans are a violent criminal. Not only that, but violent criminals happen to congregate in similar areas. So if 0.03 out of every 10 people are violent criminals, that means that the majority of people are good people, not violent criminals, which to me is a pretty dang good person. Might not get along with you over everything, right? But you're not trying to harm people. So if most people are good people, then that means that the majority of the world is good. And if the majority of the world is good, don't you want to partake in that? Don't you want to experience relationships and getting to know new people and cultures and experiences and perspectives? So when we consciously pull ourselves out of our mobile devices, not only are we becoming safer, not just for ourselves, but our loved ones, and more aware of our surroundings, but we're actually participating in the beauty and the good that life has to offer. And it's a really good thing. It's much better than being sucked down into the phone and just being propagated all this negative information all the time. At least so I have found. Now again, doesn't mean that there isn't disagreements, doesn't mean that there aren't going to be arguments, doesn't mean that you might think somebody's an absolute jerk. This guy's got a couple. But regardless, we don't wish, that they get hurt or shot or, maimed or killed. So that's a really beautiful thing, I think, that we lose sight of pretty quickly here in America. And I know that sounds weird for the Special Operations Marine to be saying, but that's kind of why I really take the time to preach it, is because it is, every single dead person that I've ever seen, it's just like, why? In the end, it's just sad. And so I encourage you all to be involved with your fellow human beings a little bit more often. And 2023, we're going to see a lot of people going out in public. It is right now, Ticketmaster has reported more than ever, like tenfold, all these events are selling out. Why? Because we're social creatures as human beings. We crave social interaction. And because we crave social interaction with one another, we haven't had it for so long, we're dying to have it. The danger, and this is going to be the dividing point, and this is my goal this year, is that being in isolation has created a lot of violent extremism. And so in conjunction with seeing more people attending more public events than ever, I hope I'm wrong, but I think we're going to see more violent shootings than ever, and I think we already have in terms of days in the year. So by applying these principles and fundamentals, you might even be able to help possibly stop one from occurring by just being more situationally aware. And I encourage us as human beings that if we're unfortunate enough to be in an incident, that we can't let it keep us divided. It can't let it shoot us back into our rooms and be more isolated. We need to be engaged with one another as human beings. All right, situational awareness is very important. So that is the pre-incident empowerment tools, things that we could do in order to empower ourselves if we're ever caught in one of these unfortunate situations. Now, next phase, during the incident. What can we do to maximize our chances of survival? So my company, Southern Cross, we go by Southern Cross Safety Academy when we do these types of trainings. I've learned in my experience, the single greatest thing that you could do in any violent encounter, if there's a human being trying to physically cause harm to your body, this is the key absolute takeaway point for this evening and in everything that I teach relative to violence. Distance equals time equals safety. The further you are away from somebody, the more time it takes them to have to engage you, the more time you have to think critically when that adrenaline is running, when that sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, is kicking in. The farther you are away from somebody, especially somebody shooting, the safer you are. Always, hands down. There's nothing else that is going to make you safer when you are unarmed than to get away from a shooter. How far do we think, just go ahead and shoot out some numbers here, how many yards do we think we have to run away from a shooter before we're more likely to survive than die? What do we think? 100 yards, a whole football field. Who else? 15, 20? For my police officer over here, what's the farthest that they have y'all shoot in your pistol qualification?
75
feet?
75 feet.
75 feet.
Qualification.
Yep.
I mean, we don't shoot farther, but.
So for the qualification, they say 75 feet, roughly 25 yards, right? Now, active shooters, not all of them, I'm sure some of them have some, experience and training, right? But they're not highly qualified people with these weapon systems. And regardless of what you hear in the news, the vast majority are done with handguns, by the way, not with rifles. The vast majority are done with handguns. We did some studying on shooting moving targets because, by the way, shooting a moving target is way more difficult than shooting a still target. I don't understand why. And if you're an educator, if you work in a school and you want to have this conversation afterwards, please, I'm dying to help a school out, but they won't let me. Because I say this, lockdowns when the threat is inside of the building is not an effective means of survival. Southern Cross safety formula says distance equals time equals safety. You need to get away from them, yes?
I fought that as a dean for years. I disagree with my school board for years with that.
When the threat's on the outside, it works.
Why we go to a lockdown?
But when it's on the inside, over 90%, and this is from my own case studies. I've done 56 case studies on shooters since the 60s till now. I haven't done it for the last 2 years. Over 90% of all casualties inside of schools, first floor.
Yes.
First floor. So distance equals time equals safety. Getting away from them as fast as possible will really increase your chance of survival. So going back to the distance, how far do we have to run before we start to compound our chances of survival? Now, this isn't a scientific math, but what we discovered, me and my buddies, when we were shooting at moving targets, was that when you get about 30 yards away from somebody, about 30 yards away, running away from them on somewhat of an angle, there's about roughly a 50% chance that you're not going to get shot. 30 yards away. That's basically from me to where Dan is standing at the back of the room. That might even be a little bit further than 30 yards. So how long does it take us to run 30 yards, especially when adrenaline is coursing through our bloodstream? They thought combine kids were running fast. You're going to move. Get away. The first thing you should be able to do, or at least the number one consideration, it's not always the first thing you're going to be able to do, I'm not going to say that, but the number one goal in your mind if you're ever caught in these incidents is to get away. One of the survivors of the Vegas shooting said, they were so confused, but they knew people were being shot. They didn't understand where it was coming from, but they saw casualties, people getting wounded around them. And this girl had taken, wasn't my class, but same concept. She had taken a class that prioritized running and getting out of there. She grabbed her boyfriend and said, I don't know where it's coming from, but we just know we need to get out of here now. And she came from where the majority of casualties were located because they were all sitting there trying to figure out what was happening. And we'll talk about trying to figure that out here in just a second. But the Southern Cross safety formula, distance equals time equals safety. And that's for any violent crime when somebody's trying to physically harm you. All right, so during the incident, we know that we want to get away from this shooter as much and as fast as possible. If we hear shots going off, my first recommendation, if you don't know where it's coming from, is to get low. You need to reduce your silhouette. Because as you just saw in the back there, I'm exposed. But if you don't know where it's coming from, reduce your silhouette and start to take in your surroundings. I prefer this little squat move here because it allows me to get up and be mobile really quickly. Now, another consideration, if you can't necessarily squat down like that, for a number of reasons, bless you, is you want to find cover and concealment. Okay, so what's cover and concealment? Cover is defined as something that a bullet cannot travel through. So bulletproof glass is an example of concealment. You could still, cover. You could still see me, so it's not concealment, because concealment is what hides you from plain sight. But cover is what a bullet cannot travel through. So if there's a vehicle around, the only place on a vehicle that is appropriate cover, and I'm telling you, is the engine block. Only place. Bullets will travel through a vehicle like butter. Engine block, and you really want to be by that tire in front of that engine block. If there's some of them concrete trash cans where they have that concrete base with the aluminum top, that can be considered a form of cover. Concealment, again, is something that hides you from plain sight and view. So if you could find something that does both, like a car with an engine block, or a major concrete pylon, or a concrete wall, or even better, a building as you're running away, cover and concealment is what you want to get yourself to. Now, if you don't know where it's coming from, you hear shots, you hear people screaming, you get down, you try to see where people are running from. The direction they're running from is most likely where the shooter's at. Then, you want to get yourself over to some cover and concealment if you're still not sure, but you want to kind of take in the situation a little bit more. But remember, what's our number one goal in this? Distance, and survival through distance, absolutely. Yes?
Going to be going like this.
Potentially.
If you're low, it's going to go over your head. You see him all the time.
Yeah.
If you're low, right over your head.
Potentially, yes, potentially. It's all about reducing your exposure, your silhouette, yes. So using cover and concealment is really important as well. Get behind things that bullets can't travel through, okay? Remember, bullets travel through things. You want to try to identify where it's coming from, and there's a couple ways we could do that. Knowing where gunshots, just by the sound alone, it's very difficult sometimes to find out where it's coming from. Your gunshots, especially if you're in the city area and it's reverberating off the buildings, and it gets really disorienting. I've been in situations where I was certain that there was gunfire coming from this location, and I was totally wrong. So you really want to try to take in, that, hey, where's it coming from? Where are people running from? All right, but ultimately, if you're close enough to where people are getting wounded and dropping all around you, you definitely want to get yourself behind some cover and concealment. Now, as you're leaving or as you're escaping or running from this situation, a good rule of thumb is to run from cover and concealment to more cover and concealment. You don't want to just get up and start bolting out of there if you're within what we call that kill zone. So if this set of chairs is cover and concealment, before I get up and decide to run and move with my family, I'm going to look for the next cover and concealment location, running away from the shooter. So if the shooter is at the back of the room and I'm here, and let's say that this next row is cover and concealment, I'm going to look and I'm going to say, that's where I'm going. And I'm going to tell my family, hey, we're getting up on 3 and we're going to that location. 1, 2, 3. And then I say to myself, I'm up, he sees me, I'm down. Don't get caught doing these crazy long sprints while you're super exposed to a shooter. I'm up, he sees me, I'm down. You're behind cover and concealment. I'm up, he sees me, I'm down. You're behind cover and concealment. Because when you're bounding in these types of movements, they're not going to have enough time to get you in their crosshairs. And what are we doing? We're progressively getting ourselves further away from them. This really only applies when you're within that kill zone or you're directly exposed to the shooter. I'm up, he sees me, I'm down. Now, if you're in an open area, like a big old field, like let's say theoretically we're out here at the Commons, we're all enjoying a great night put on by the community, and all of a sudden some unfortunate incident starts to unfold. There is no cover and concealment. So in that situation and in that case, you have one option and one option only: get as much distance as fast as you possibly can, right? These tips and tricks and these tactics here, they're not absolutely set in stone. They're not one by one. These are just things you want to be considering with the overarching goal of what? Distance. Creating distance as quickly and fastly and as safely as possible. Now let's talk about helping other people in these situations. What if somebody's wounded? Hey, sorry, buddy. No, right? You'd probably have a hard time sleeping after that for quite a while. So, physical strength is going to be important. Now, there's a couple of different ways that we can help people out. One way is by doing the fireman's carry. All right? Who's willing to be a demonstrator to have me put you up on my shoulders?
I'll do it, sir.
Yeah, it's always the biggest guy too, by the way. Yeah.
How strong you feeling today?
All right, come on, let's see if you embarrass me or not. All right, so
Did you sign the waiver, Phil?
No, he should sign it.
let's say we got, what's your name?
Phil.
Phil. Let's say we got my guy Phil here, okay? And he happens to get wounded. And he's not unconscious. There is a way to do this unconsciously. I'm not going to do that on you today. But, we want to get Phil to some safety. Put your arm around me. Now, doing it like this, we can get Phil to safety, but he's probably in a lot of pain, and it's taking a lot of time, right? So the way we could do a fireman's carry is you want to grab him by the opposite. So basically, my left is grabbing his right. You need to definitely be using your legs on this. You don't want to use your back. And then you're just going to tell me, go ahead, sit yourself, man. Go ahead, lay down. Oh, man.
I'm dead. I'm just saying.
I know. The Special Operations Marine, super tough guy, right?
You think carrying your kid is hard?
But
Try this one.
if you're strong enough, actually, remember, physical strength is important. You get them up on your back like that, and then you carry them, right? And if you have somebody to assist you along the way, matter of fact, let me get you up here. Come back up here. I want to do this again.
No.
He's going to assist me. This is important, though. This really is important. It's not just about my ego. So when I put him on my back, what I want you to do is grab him by his belt and basically just assist me and spot me in lifting him up, okay? All right. Go ahead, lay down. All right, you tell me on 3 when you're ready to lift.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
All right, you see? Cool, awesome, thank you. No, that was good. So you see here the importance of teamwork, right? It's not comfortable for Phil, I can tell you that much. So, getting Phil out of there and taking those few steps that I did was a little bit faster than us limping him out, okay? Things to always consider when wanting to help other people in these situations. Need some water, hold on.
That's right. Even though it didn't work out, but they get a load on me.
Did it to myself.
But you did it.
All right, then the next way we could do this is basically the human crutch. So like I had Phil that first time with his arm around me, you want to be sure though to grab them by the back of their belt or their pants. So with each step, you're lifting them with you, reducing the amount of stress on their physical body so that they can move as fast as possible. Because when you're wounded, every step you take sends shocking pain through your body. So the less weight that they're applying on those steps, the less pain they're going to feel, so the faster they can move, all right? The next way to do it is a chair carry. So if we have somebody who's wounded or injured and there's chairs like we have in here, you and another person, what's your name? Chris and I come up, basically sit somebody down in a chair, and then we lift the chair up on each side, and then we can carry somebody out. Pretty common technique used by firefighters in skyscrapers. So by knowing how to do these carries, by being a little bit physically fit, more physically fit than I am, probably Chris could have done it on the first try. Man, I know, yeah. It can make a big difference. You could really save somebody's life, right? So you could truly, truly help keep somebody safe and alive in that situation. All right, so we know that the number one goal is to create distance. But what if we're stuck in a building? Like, what if there's just no way out? What if you're in a high rise and somebody happens to come in and we actually do really need to hide, okay? Well, the best way to hide, and this is how I recommend everybody always hide in these situations, we're not victims here, and we're not going to let somebody take us away from our loved ones. We're not going to let somebody ruin the rest of our life with an injury and have to wear a colostomy bag for the rest of our life and not be present for our family. So when we hide to fight. You hide to fight. Who here has a sibling, or when you were kids with your friends and you're playing hide and seek, and I'm talking elementary school years, or maybe if you're like me, high school. I'm just joking. I was playing hide and seek from the cops more than anything.
That's why I went to the Marines.
It actually is, yeah. It actually is a big reason why. But I digress too. For me at least, I always loved hiding right behind the door. Because my brother would push the door open and I'm against the wall and I'm like, oh, this idiot doesn't see me. You guys hiding? Did you just scare her today about that or something?
Not today, but it's coming.
Nice. It's coming again tonight, just so you know. Be ready. We got to work on your fight response, not your flight response, and then he'll stop.
She didn't know it was training.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all right. That's the best type. We only taught you once?
No, one time I accidentally scared him. He almost punched me in the face.
That's the fight response. Yeah, absolutely. And you can train that, by the way. You could train yourself out of a flight response and a fear-based response into a fight response. You absolutely can. However, I digress. If you're going to hide, if you're stuck, hide to fight. So here we have an outlay of an office building, and you have the red dot there in the middle. That's the violent perpetrator, the shooter. Everybody in the blue rectangles are employees in the office. Could we discern any theme from where these employees are all located? On either side of the door. Now, there's a couple of reasons behind this. One, you're not going to be able to alleviate all risk. Can he just start shooting through the drywall? Yes, absolutely. But the distance, the safety formula, how it works in our benefit, it actually also works against the shooter in these types of situations. And what I mean by that is, if somebody was to come in that back door right there and want to shoot me, and I'm all the way at the end of this room right here, can I do much? Can I fight them? No. But if I hide myself along the peripheral of the door and they first make that entry into the room, do I now have a chance? Yes. Absolutely, I do. You need to close that distance. And I could tell you that when you come through a door with a firearm, when you're highly, highly trained, there's always going to be dead space. We call it the fatal funnel for a reason, because you have to get channelized through that door. Now, depending on which way the door opens, I don't know if y'all can really see too well back there, but when I push this door open, it opens this way, right? So that can make a big difference. If you're in an office building and you know which way the door opens, well, let's say that the door is opening this way, that means the gun needs to come in this way first. So if I can, I'll hide on the opposite side, and I'll see the barrel of that firearm coming in, and I'll give myself the best chance possible. Not always, but it's all about increasing our odds here. So this is also a really big reason why having firearms familiarization training is really, really useful, because there is a way for you to jam the gun after one single shot. And with their adrenaline and with their fear going, they're not necessarily going to be thinking immediate action drills, tap, rack, bang, clear the obstruction, re-engage. Because you're going to have a portion of that firearm and you're going to control a portion of that firearm. And you're going to be fighting for your dear life. And something tells me, do I have any moms in here? Yeah, something tells me y'all are going to kick the crap out of that person because they're not taking you away from your child. Not at that point. So, hide to fight. Now let's talk about this here really quick. This is a block of plastic, okay? It's not even a blank. This is not a gun. It's an absolute prop, okay? Just so everybody is clear on that. All right? Who would like to come up and be my demonstrator? I'm not going to carry you, don't worry. Ma'am, go ahead, come on up here. So as you see in the photograph up here, get behind the gun. All right? Get behind the gun. Go ahead and just, I'm going to have you just point this towards that wall right there. So this works with a rifle. It works with a pistol. If she's coming through this doorway and I see this gun coming through the door, I'm simply just going to bear hug these arms and these hands. Bear hug the hell out of them, and then I'm just going to drop with all my body weight. Did you hear my shoulder? It's not Phil, don't worry, man. It's just... It's the years... It's the years of being beat up, don't worry. It's not anything. So when we just put all of our body weight down like that, they're going to have two options: let go of the gun or fall with us. Not only that, but go ahead, point it back again. This is a semi-automatic striker-fired pistol, or actually hammer-fired pistol. So what that means is that if I bear hug her arms and she shoots right now, this weapon is most likely going to be jammed, especially as I'm falling to the floor with it. Now, if she shoots, am I going to get shot? A little bit of a grazing wound, right? Way better than getting killed. Absolutely. And odds are you're probably not going to feel that pain right away anyways because of the adrenaline.
Why is it going to get you?
Because in something called the cycle of operations. When the gun goes off and that overpressure takes place and the gaseous release from that primer, that burning primer or that gunpowder goes off, the majority of the hot gas escapes out the muzzle of the barrel behind the bullet. That's what creates velocity with that bullet. Well, the residual portion of that gas, about 5 to 10% of that gas, is looking for the path of least resistance. The secondary path of least resistance is back, because this is a moving piece of metal, is back and out of what we call the ejection port. That's how the shell casing comes out. And as that slide now, because it's spring operated, begins to slide back forward into what we call battery or lock in place, it brings a new fresh bullet with it. Well, when I'm bear hugging, if it goes off, it's not allowing for either one, that shell casing to be ejected, or it's not allowing for this slide to completely unlock out of battery, therefore resulting in no ammunition being locked into the chamber. But you got to make sure you're really bear hugging the crap out of that thing and obstructing what we call that cycle of operations.
How long will it stay jammed?
Until somebody clears out the malfunction. Yep, because they could be pulling the trigger. Thank you very much. You can give her a round of applause. They could be pulling the trigger continuously, but it's not going to do anything because there's no bullet in there. And then the firing pin also didn't get cocked as well. But yeah, we can definitely dive way far into that if you guys want to another time. But just know that if you're up here and it's a rifle, you bear hug that rifle and you just drop to the ground. And here's the thing. If you're with anybody else in that room, hey, I'm going for the gun, rip his freaking eyes out.
Yep. Hit the eyes.
You give a very specified task to everybody in the room. Fish hook his cheek, grab his left leg, rip off the groin. I keep saying males because they're the vast majority. But actually, there's a female active shooter now who still has not been arrested. Still at large. So it's not always men, and sometimes it's a couple, like that Walmart shooting. So, have a very specified task as to what each person is going to do. And now, here's the unfortunate piece, right? You don't have a choice anymore at this point. They stole your freedom of not ever having to inflict grievous bodily injury or kill somebody. They took that away from you. And they're trying to take away more. The goal here isn't to level the playing field. The goal is to overpower it with every single thing that you have. And it's sad and it's unfortunate and it sucks. But it's just the reality at that time. Exactly. Exactly. And I tell you what, from a woman who I did some training with not that long ago, who was able to get herself out of a really nasty situation. The guy wanted to criminally sexually assault her. She ended up fighting her way out of it, utilizing some stuff that we had talked about. And I tell you what, even though it's still scary and like somewhat traumatizing to think back on the incident, she is pumped on life right now because she knows that nobody can take advantage of her without a fight. And she got herself out of that situation. So she's not a victim in it anymore, she's a victor. She's absolutely pumped on life. And she's so happy that she was scared, but she was courageous enough to fight that person and was very successful. How long do most active shooter incidents last? 4 to 5 minutes, couple minutes. Yeah, on average, less than 4 minutes. And that's due to a couple of factors. This is on average, not always, but on average. National police response time is 4 to 6 minutes, nationally on average, right? Usually they run out of ammunition pretty quickly. So if we are hiding, and we are hiding to fight, all right, don't get caught in, hey, I need to hide. What's the number one goal in an active shooter situation? Distance. Roughly over 70% of all victims in active shooter cases are hiding. The Orlando nightclub shooting, where the vast majority of people are either killed in the initial outburst of gunfire or they're killed while hiding. The Orlando nightclub shooting, where the majority of people were killed in that bathroom. You hear about the bathroom from hell, bathroom horror, whatever they call it. Everybody was flooding out the dance floor, running into the bathroom to hide. This was the emergency exit to get out of the club. Literally feet away. Feet away. But because they hadn't taken time to educate themselves and be trained on, hey, gain distance, get out, get as far away as you possibly can. What happens? They had a fear-based response. They wanted to hide. Right? And unfortunately, we don't hide very well. We hide like children with the foot sticking out underneath the bed whenever we're in these times of great fear.
Or herd mentality.
That's another part of it too, which sometimes could be good if they're getting away, but not when they're hiding in a bathroom. All right, so transitioning into the post-incident, right? So we talked about pre-incident, we talked about during the incident, now post-incident. What's the number one thing we want to do if we see responding law enforcement coming at us? Hands. Hands, hands, hands. There's a reason they always say that. It's because hands kill people. If you're showing them your hands and you run past them, you don't stop in front of them, you run past them. And then if you can, if they ask you, you give them some information. I use the acronym SLEW. Sex, location, equipment, and weapon. I'm running past the cops. Hey, he's a male. He's in the back room over there. He's wearing a black hoodie. He's wearing military equipment. He has a pistol. He has a handgun. He has a rifle. He has a shotgun. And I'm keeping it going. The cops aren't going to stop and ask me for my highly detailed explanation of the series of events that are currently taking place. No, they're worried about neutralizing that threat. So hands, and you move past them. And if they ask you, or if you can give it to them, you give them that acronym SLEW. Sex, location, equipment, and weapon. Does that sound pretty good, sir? All right, cool. All right. Don't let me start seeing that acronym now in Cook County. I'm going to be... Honestly, though, go ahead. That would be a very big honor. All right, assisting medical personnel. Who here has taken Stop the Bleed training? Awesome. That's incredible. All of you will be capable of assisting in triage. That is huge. The majority of, in active shooter events, there's two types of injuries. You're either going to be killed pretty quickly or you're going to have an injury that's survivable. However, a lot of those survivable injuries are dictated by two things. What you've done since you were injured, as in like the moving piece, and also what takes place or how quickly you can get to treatment, medical treatment. So a non-life-threatening bleed can turn into a threatening bleed. A chest wound can turn into something called tension pneumothorax, where you start to basically suffocate yourself from trying to breathe. So knowing how to do that, knowing how to assist medical personnel is huge. They are going to need it. And then accountability. Who here has ever taken active shooter training at their workplace before? Let me see your hands. Look at the room really quick. Please keep your hands up. What is this, 10%? And we wonder why we keep seeing workplace violence incidents taking place. Not only that, but how many of you people who have done active shooter workplace violence training, how many of you had somebody actually certified and experienced and credentialed come into your location to perform that training? Even less. So probably what, 2% of this room, 3% of this room? Over 80% of workplaces do not even have a policy. Yet we still keep seeing issues. Yet we're still sitting here scratching our heads. Why do we keep seeing these issues occurring? How many kids died in a school fire last year? 0. Because we plan for it, and we prepare for it, and we train on it, and we drill on it. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot. The market is saturated with horrible workplace violence active shooter trainers. They come kicking in the door, they're shooting blanks, they got this guy on the ground with fake blood squirting out of him. It's the first 3 minutes. That does nothing except make you nervous as heck, thinking, oh, I'm screwed. But remember what I said when we started, you are not screwed, you are very capable of surviving these situations.
Do you think that's probably one of the biggest reasons why a lot of workplaces don't engage in active shooter training?
I do. I absolutely do. And it's been a part of my mission, and my goal is to really explain to people, look, you look at this like a fire drill. Like, I'm not going to come bursting in your door shooting blanks off. That is literally the worst possible thing you could do. And they were doing this to kids in schools. And now you get all this news propagation saying, oh, active shooter training is too traumatizing for children. Well, yeah. And in the longer courses that I teach, I show the videos. People coming in the room literally shooting blanks out, bah, 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 you're dead, lay down. And these are like elementary school 3rd graders. It's insane. You could look it up. It's all over the place. So having good, proper training and accountability is really huge. Accountability is big because some of these wounds that we suffer from could be very survivable, but we need to have accountability of everybody and know where everybody's at. So assisting with accountability, if you're in the workplace, or if you're in an event and getting accountability to your people because you have that pre-designated family link-up point, that is huge. It could honestly make the difference between life and death for somebody by having accountability. All right, so let's do a quick little review because for an hour and a half, it is a lot of information, but you know, it is just kind of like the wave tops. You know, doing rehearsals and educating yourself, continuing to educate yourself, continuing to have conversations about this stuff is huge. We need to constructively and proactively be engaging with one another in order to have a positive impact on this horrible, horrible trend that's taking place. So, pre-incident, remember, be a little bit more physically fit than Joe, all right? Have situational awareness, okay? Being physically fit and having situational awareness can literally save your life. Always have a family link-up plan everywhere you go. Practice it within your daily routine so that it goes into that subconscious. If you're up for it, take some firearms training. Make sure you have a good empathetic instructor, not some jerk who just wants to stroke their ego, okay? That's really important on that because a lot of those guys do that too. Educate yourself and take training just like you are here tonight. Continue to engage with one another in proactive conversations. And carry pepper spray. Know how to use it. And make sure that you replace it every 3 to 5 years. Don't just keep it on you for 15, 20 years because it can go bad. And I know there's one of you in here who carries the same one ever since you were like in college or something. During the incident, okay, Southern Cross safety formula. Who can remember the formula? What is it? Yep, distance equals time equals safety. Distance equals time equals safety. That's the overarching theme of it all. You want to get away as fast as you possibly can, but do so safely. Sometimes you got to use cover and concealment. Sometimes you have to get low. Sometimes you have to use those bounding techniques from cover and concealment to cover and concealment. If you're in open areas, boom, just get out of there. You're just in a bad spot. You definitely want to get out of there.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
When you're out in an open area, sometimes I've read where you should run like
Serpentine, yeah. It just depends. So I wouldn't necessarily do something like this.
that. No, I mean,
Right, but if you're running and then you're starting to zigzag, just make sure that it's little serpentines. You don't want to get long, drawn-out serpentines because what's that doing? Yeah, you're going lateral. You could do little ones or maybe a couple just to kind of mix it up a little bit, but don't get too wrapped up in, doing the serpentine. Yeah. All right, post-incident, law enforcement, what do we show them when we see them showing up? What's the information that we could give them? What's the acronym? SLEW, sex. Whoa. That is the S in SLEW, yes. All right. Moving on. Yeah. What would the G? Oh, gender. I'm not going down that road. That is like way too hard. All right. Assisting medical personnel, okay? Just, remaining cool, calm, collect. Remember, WWMMD, right? What would Matthew McConaughey do? He'd be cool, brother. He'd be cool, sister. Always. Rule number 1 in the special operations community is look cool. All right? I obviously never accomplished that, which is why I got out. And then ultimately, post-incident accountability is huge. Accountability could really save somebody's life. All right, if you want more information, we're starting to really get into this whole marketing piece and putting information out there. My goal is to just help people live happier, safer, more joyous lives. When we can learn how to love and interact with one another in a positive context, not only are we reducing the neurochemical precursors for violence, but we are actually increasing the likelihood of violence not taking place for the people around us, right? We're developing good, kind, loving relationships, and we're having good, fun times, and we're just getting back to, I would love to see us just get back to what things were like before everything really began to separate us, and I think a lot of people feel that way. So if you need anything, if you have a workplace and if you email us at training@southerncross.company, I will come through and we will do a free consultation for your workplace to give you some advice on a policy. How to create a policy and an effective training plan, all right? Thank you all very much. I really appreciate everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Awesome. Appreciate it, man.
I just wanted to say once again, first and foremost, Joe, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, thank you for the presentation. Joe mentioned how you can get a hold of him, but everyone has a flyer here for March 30th. That's the big health and safety expo, severe weather spotter training, big touch-a-truck. Joe is actually going to have a table, so if you'd like to see Joe in person again, he's going to have a table at that event. So please share that with everyone that you know. Come out to the event. It'll be a real good event. Other announcement, on Thursday evening, if you haven't already signed up, we're going to do, it's a behavioral health class, mental health, suicide prevention. It's called QPR. It's going to be Thursday night in this room at 7 o'clock. Kind of the same deal, 7 to 8:30. If you're interested in that, I think I have enough spaces open. If you want to come out to that, you're more than welcome. Again, Thursday night, 7 to 8:30. It's taught by Seratoma Center. Gia Washington does a great job with that class. So I'll extend that invitation to everyone to come out. So with that, again, thanks, Joe. Thanks to all of you for that.
Thank you.
I have all of you on my email list, so when we do stuff like this, I'll send an email out. I don't send them out very often. You're not going to see emails all the time, except for the CERT people. The CERT people, I send a lot of emails out. But everybody else, I'll send out an email every now and then when we're doing something like this, just to keep you clued in as to what we're doing with safe communities in the village of New Lenox. All right? All right, everyone, safe night. Safe travels. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you very much. It was very informative.
Cool, awesome. Glad.
Good job. But I tell you what you are correct. What the district did when we were hollering about that, the next person they brought in, they told us instead of barricading, we had to have a plan of how to escape out. So the school district corrected that in my last 2 years before I retired.
Good.
Because I have all the time complained about barricading in. You got windows, they could see, they could drop, they could shoot, and kids could die. So I have always had a way of either jumping out of the second floor off into the building or getting away from it. Good job.
Good, awesome. Glad. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Hey.
Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Thank
Since
you.
you're a resident, you'll see what it is.
Oh, awesome.
I think you'll know what that
Yeah,
is,
absolutely.
so-
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Hey, Phil, my man, Phil. Hey, Phil. Sorry, one second. Hey, thank you very
Hey,
much, man.
thank you, Joe. I appreciate it,
for
man.
being a good sport,
Thank you
man.
so much.
Appreciate that, dude. Yeah.
Hope I didn't hurt you.
Not at all, man. Thank you. All right, sorry, guys.
Way to leave. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks.
It was absolutely excellent. I think it's one of the most productive things I have ever had a chance to do.
That means a lot to me. Thank you.
I work at a hospital. We are looking at the same old film, which is so outdated and so peculiarly useless.
Yeah.
And no upgrades, and we're in a high-risk situation.
Hospitals.
This is excellent. I wish you could come. I can't do anything to further that along, but you would be an enormous improvement for us.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And thank you for working at the hospital. Hospital workers are most at risk for workplace violence. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
This is very well done.
Awesome.
I hope you will come back and bring us even more.
Yeah, I think September we're going to do another one of these. So,
Good.
yeah.
Good.
Thank you all.
I have a question. In SLU, it's sex, location.
Equipment and weapon.
Okay, what's equipment?
Like clothing, or if they're wearing vests or helmets or something like that. Anything really identifiable. And then weapon, we separate weapon from general clothing and equipment because that's something we specifically want to be able to inform them of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry we bought in front of you.
I actually don't know, but that's the email. I don't know if you could take a picture of it or not.
I wanted to pass it on to the health department kid.
Okay.
They health classes also.
Okay.
And they've had active shooters, but yours is better.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
They stress the hide.
Yeah, and I hate that. I hate that. Instead of run, hide, and fight, it's hide, hope, and die.
Yeah.
Because 80% of people who are killed are hiding.
Yeah.
So I could take down your information though if you want and kind of reach out to you. Let me. Here's a pen. All right, cool. Yeah, I know. I should carry cards. We just changed all our numbers though, so I had to get rid of all my cards.
You got 13 years then.
Yeah.
You ever thought of doing like 7 years in the Reserve National Guard, getting a pension?
I'm over it, man. I'm just, my last deployment, was the last straw.
Oh,
I'm done. Yeah, I'll never work for the government like that again.
because I did.
Cool. Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely shoot you an email, man.
Yeah, because they send me $2,200 a month. Retired National Guard reservist.
Yeah, it was.
That's, and all plus TRICARE and
Yeah.
and the wife gets a pension when I die. She keeps the TRICARE, and it's just like, and I just,
Well, you've got the VA too if you want.
Oh yeah, well, I was just there today. I'm getting cataracts.
Yeah, it was a choice, but it was I can't anymore. I just can't in good conscience. When we gave the Iraqis M1 Abrams tanks, and we're told to abandon the Kurdish positions, who were the best foreign fighters I ever worked with, and the Iraqi tanks were American tanks rolled up with the Ayatollah of Iran flying from it. I said, I'm done. I'm just done. I can't do this anymore. And then you look at Afghanistan, you look at Iraq, you look at everywhere.
Bosnia was even worse. I was in Vietnam. I thought that was strange, so I got to Bosnia. We brought the Mujahideen in to fight with the Bosnians. Only person I fought there besides the Croatians who were supposed to be fighting were the Mujahideen. I brought back a nice Italian bayonet, surplus from a couple wars back. Thought I'd get $5 for it. The same bayonet would have fit on Lee Harvey Oswald rifle. Got $100 for it.
Oh wow, that's
And,
weird.
but there was like 6 of them though. Of course, from 6 Mujahideen. Anyway, they were dead. They weren't using them, so I just picked up one. I was like, yeah, get $5. It was nice, kind of folded and everything.
Wow.
Really nice knife. Geez, that was $500. But I got out. I retired one day. There was a big massacre. Mujahideen went to the town. They went to the mosque. Of course, they were communists. They didn't know much about it, but they wanted to be. So after the service, the local Bosnians brought out some beers, but drinking beers in the mosque. You probably know what that means.
Yeah, it's a big insult. Yeah.
So anyway, the Mujahideen wiped out the whole town. I was civil affairs. They took over and they said, okay, find some way of making this look like the Serbs did this.
Yeah, yeah.
And I said, I'm retired.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
I'm out of here. But
yeah.
I get $2,200 a month now, plus other benefits.
That's good, man. That's good. Good.
I would have went to the Coast Guard, but when I was a kid, the Air Force promised got me flight status, so I went that. And then when I got into the Air Force, the Army promised me OCS, Coast Guard won, and I always wanted my whole life I was going to go to the Coast Guard. I wanted to, but every time there was somebody.
They sent my whole unit over to the call.
Yeah, but every time when I went to them to say, can you give me OCS? Well, blah, 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 well, you were Air Force, and blah, blah, blah. And the Army said, yeah, you sign up. I went to basic at 17. I went to OCS at 26, infantry OCS. I'm like this dragging old man. I'm like, oh my God, that was a killer. But,
Yeah. Well, that's why when I was messing with the girl and the gun, she heard my shoulder just like cracking, and I'm just like, man, it takes a toll on your body. You know, it's another big reason why I wanted to get out, man.
You don't do much with that. You should take this enough because someday
All you
somebody's
gotta
going to
do
get
is get it out of battery.
Well, no.
Exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll put your thumb here, but for training, if somebody has the finger in there and you grab it, you could break their finger. So I would always take this part off. So you're doing that and somebody pulls it too fast, your finger ain't stuck. She's had her finger in there. It's
If
kind
you're
of like.
really brave, you just push back like that.
Oh, yeah.
Out of battery.
But
Yeah. If you're really brave.
Really great.
Yeah, and fast.
And good.
I
Yeah.
got a small finger.
I don't know about that one.
I
Yeah.
know a cop that did that. He did that with a guy with a big 45, and come on. And the guy was like, "Get your finger out there, or pull the trigger. That's gonna blow my face off. Well, not gonna do much to my finger either." And the guy just let the gun off, and the cop just, he's talking about his shoulder. That's the funniest thing, but this idiot was just, I mean, some of these people, the wife is always, we watch the TV and you see all these little yellow things for the shells. And I always count them. So there's 19 shells that I can count, and 2 guys got wounded.
Yeah.
And the wife said, "Yeah, I know what you to be 19 dead bodies there." They said, "Yeah, I was trained different." But these guys, I say, you see them shooting, they're like this. And it's like, yeah, as you said, get down low, because this idiot's going, unless you're like this high, just get down.
Yeah.
Do duck walk, so many things.
Again, I appreciate it, man.
Oh man, no problem.
Yeah.
I'm glad to
Yeah,
help. Sorry
it was
to
great. It was
put you
great.
through it. I can reach out to you through the email.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because
And
I work for Cook County.
cool.
But I'm also on the board of the Illinois CERT Association.
Okay.
And love to have you do a virtual training if you could.
Awesome.
do that.
Yeah, man. I could.
Members.
We could do whatever.
We had one going tonight. It's every month, but I'll talk to you.
Yeah.
Probably get 75, 80 people on a training.
Cool.
That'd be great for a CERT.
Yeah, man. Just whenever you email the training team, just let them know that you were here.
Okay.
They'll push it, and then I'll reach out to you directly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool, man.
Take care, man.
Thanks again, brother.
Thanks again, brother.
Yeah, dude. Have a good day.
Lieutenant JG. Oh, okay.
Most people don't even know what that is.
I was Air Force and Army, so.
Oh, okay. We had a bunch of Army, we had a bunch of Air Force, we had a bunch of Marines. They all switched over.
Oh, yeah. We went to Galveston and
I gotta tell you one thing. Dan taught this class. You did a better job.
I didn't hear that. But thank you.
both came in, so I showed my ID card.
What's up, man? Really good. Thanks. Yes. What that whole like the neuroscience piece is really where we just try to like focus on with the schools. That's for sure.